Hi everyone, and thank you for coming to watch my channel. As usual, I start my videos by saying that if you're going to watch my channel, then you have to expect crazy family life, interruptions, edits, and not super high tech. But I'm here, and I want to give to the women of this world and share my journey, the knowledge that I've received in my journey, and I do my best, and I want to inspire moms everywhere, but especially in the Western world where there isn't a lot of focus on the community surrounding a mother and the family. We're all very much isolated. Really inspire moms to throw out the perfectionism and really go what you feel called to do, and intuitively include your children, the most important thing in your life, to whatever you're doing. So yeah, again, thanks for watching. So today's video is about breastfeeding, and I'm going to just share with you a little bit of my journey regarding breastfeeding, and do a little intro here. Breastfeeding is one of the vital roots of ancient womanhood. In the Western world, especially in the last few hundred years, it took only a few hundred years to really bury thousands of years of woman legacy, grandmother, mother, daughter connection in these realms, in these womanly realms, and sort of hand it over to hi, there's an interruption there. That's okay. That's what happens in my videos. It is what it is. So just talking about a little bit of intro to breastfeeding and some call the womanly art of breastfeeding. And it really did take only about a few hundred years to bury thousands of years of womanly connection, wisdom, legacy, that grandmother, mother, daughter connection, that line, that matriarchal line that existed in thousands of cultures all over the world, including the West, and really was handed over to a more masculine-centered practice in the medical field, and breastfeeding is included in this. Breastfeeding was all but wiped out in the around the 1930s to around the late 1950s, and the formula boom erupted in those decades. A doctor even claimed that formula is more nutritious and better than breast milk. I have met mothers who said that they were given without their permission. It was just a procedure that it was done, shots to dry up their milk, and what a lot of women get really defensive about this in the Western world, because I feel part of that is because they're not taking into context history, the history of women in general, and the history of woman power in general, not just the last few hundred years and then only the last 70 years or so in the United States, and maybe a little more than that in Europe, with the women's lib movement and stuff, where women's liberation really was only a necessity in the Western world because of Western influences that imprisoned women with certain norms. But in the ancient world, and if we're going to look in as an ancient womanhood, womanly practices and womanly things like pregnancy, birth, postpartum breastfeeding, were all recognized as woman's power. And because of that community around women in the ancient world, surrounding the women's space, that those ideals and those values could really be felt on their deepest level, as women, and really feed from the roots of who we are, that deep creative soulful place of who we are that really originates in the womb. And the very fact that we for thousands of years have birthed our nations, and way before formula, it's just it's just a out and out lie that healthy societies in the ancient world, babies were dying left and right, and mothers were dying left and right because there was no medical field, when that's just simply not true. When there were wars and poverty and things, that was different. When there was conflict. But in healthy societies, women had their own societies. It was much more prevalent in the ancient world. And actually anthropologists have traveled to countries all over the world, and even in indigenous communities, studied indigenous communities over the last couple hundred years, in the Americas, and seeing that these healthy, before westernization, before poverty, before oppression, all these things, that actually the maternal mortality rates and the mortality rates within their tribes were almost non-existent. When actually the United States at present is the only developed nation in this country with a rising maternal mortality rate, and has one of the highest mortality rates among developed nations. One moment, please. Okay, I had to pause there for a second. So women get really defensive in the Western world because we're not living in the right context, mindful context of who we are and on what our history has been. And that context has to include the ancient world. It has to include the last few hundred years in which so much wisdom and knowledge that actually made ancient communities, right up until westernization, a few hundred years back, that made them flourish and didn't have death, and didn't have poverty, and didn't have maternal mortality rate and medical complications, or complications in breastfeeding. We live in a medical context. We live in the context of the last few hundred years in which the medical community actually, there are records of the medical community actually creating laws to prevent women from practicing the natural way, that made it more and more difficult for midwives to practice in the United States. And but yet midwifery has the roots of midwifery and the roots of ancient womanhood has never died, and it never will. So in the circumstance, having said all that, in the circumstances of our nation now, and of our world now, in the westernized parts especially, we're in a highly business-oriented, masculine centered environment. And excuse me. And women are highly isolated. And that not just only includes mothers, but especially mothers. And the womanly art and empowerment and power of breastfeeding and woman power of breastfeeding has only just revived in the last 50 years or so, or less. I'd like to just invite you to see the ancient context of women, and not just in the last few hundred years, not just in these modern times, but take you back to times when matriarchies were very prevalent, where the goddess deities were very prevalent, where women had their communities, women had their space. And culturally, in so many contexts, men respected that. And so I'd like to invite you there while I talk about my experience here with breastfeeding. Breast milk is phenomenal. Breast milk is this incredible food made and developed by nature, by our bodies, and spiritually our feminine selves, and it hydrates the baby, it completely hydrates the baby, including completely feeds the baby nutrients, and it is rich in complete vitamin, mineral, sugars, carbohydrates. It is actually made specifically for your child. So, in one of the ways after the child comes out of the body, it's happening in the body. When the child comes out of the body and the child starts sucking on your breast, it actually has been scientifically researched, although I always say that I don't necessarily think that makes it more legitimate. Ancient people have known something deep about our bodies, women's selves already before modern science. But it has been scientifically researched that the baby, when they suck on the breast, their saliva will go into the breast and into the nipple, and the body will read it and see specifically and produce specifically what the baby needs and what the baby is lacking in, what they need more of. Do they need to be hydrated more? Do they need more carbohydrates? Do they need, etc. It's phenomenal. Your breast milk is made from the fat in the mother's body. And then another little phenomenal tidbit on breastfeeding is that breastfeeding modern research has shown that breastfeeding, that children who breastfeed are more likely to have better alignment. Not just drink milk from a bottle, not just drink not just drink breast milk from a bottle, but actually suck on the breast. They are more likely to have better jaw alignment and tooth alignment. And just research has shown that children are all around healthier if they breastfeed. Not just from a bottle, but from the breast, from the actual breast. But having breast milk, obviously, in general, shows that all around that babies are more healthy when they consume breast milk. They say, especially for the first 6 months, at least. So, do we need scientific research for this? I think for the modern person, probably we do. Because as I said, we're living in a very closed context of only the last few hundred years. But if you go back thousands of years, think about it. Just to think about going into your woman roots and really thinking about, not just with your head, but with your heart and your womb, think about, it was women who birthed this world. We're the women who birthed this nation, birthed the world, and didn't just birth and bring forth the life in this world and let it live, but let it live on earth. All people had was breast milk. That's all they had, mostly. There was goat milk and there were some other options, but there was breast milk. There were wet nurses and breast milk and the mother. And if the mother couldn't breastfeed, most likely she had a woman around her who could breastfeed the baby. And it's only been, and I say this again, it has only been the last few hundred years that babies have had other options. And here we are. We have been on this planet for thousands of years. And somehow we made it up until a few hundred years ago. Sorry, interruption. I had to go do something with the kids. So, I'm not sure where I left off, but I will do my best. Yeah, I think I was just saying that, humanity has been sustained by the natural forces in women for thousands of years. And the medical context in the Western norm is only really a few hundred years old. So I would like to help women tap back in, especially Western women, because we live in a society really so severed from that, and tap back into that ancient womanhood. So, so my experience with breastfeeding. Okay, so before I had kids, I had very small breasts, and because of a lot of trauma in my childhood, I came to discover they were very painful all the time. The glands were very hard and painful all the time. So, intuitive journey with my first baby, but every time someone would say something and it would ring a bell in my mind, I just felt like I needed to go and follow that. I did, and one of the things someone said to me, a practitioner, a natural practitioner, Ayurvedic practitioner said to me, she said, you need to massage your breasts and break up soften those glands in your breasts. It would rub them with, coconut oil and or castor oil and or sesame oil. And I think she wanted me to mix them all together, but it could be any of those. And she said, do it in the shower so that it soaks right in. Anyway, I was really good about that, and because I really felt I was supposed to. It was excruciating at first. But for some reason, tapping into that place, I just knew I needed to do this to prepare. Also, because my mother had a very difficult time breastfeeding any of us. She never made it past, I think, about a month or something like that with most of us. And she had four kids. And I just wanted to really overcome that womanly wound in my family's line, my maternal line. And of course, my grandmother didn't breastfeed very much. I often wonder if they gave her a shot to dry up her milk and she just didn't even know, because she always said she didn't have enough. So, anyways, and then her mother, it wasn't considered healthy or even like prestigious or anything to breastfeed. So, anyway, I really wanted to help heal that maternal wound in my family, and I massaged my breasts, and I swear, if I had not done that, I think I would have struggled a lot. Like my mother did, like my grandmother did. But because I did that, and because I really discovered that self-care in doing that, I feel that I healed and I began that healing process and conquered a lot. Had very successful breastfeeding with all my children. I may need to pause for a second. Hi. So, so I think I left off at where I massaged my breast with the oil, and I had a very successful breastfeeding with my first and with all of my children, all 3 of my children so far. Got 1 on the way. A couple of things that I ran into with breastfeeding. Okay, so one of them was, which I kind of wanted, when the issues that women encounter breastfeeding, so much can be prevented through that reconnection with womanly roots, through reading birth stories, reading natural birth stories. You can find those birth stories in a book called Spiritual Midwifery by Gaskin. I'll put that in the description. And natural birth stories, and meditating with the thoughts and energy of your maternal line, massaging your breasts, having that self-care, so deep and important. In preparing for breastfeeding, it really helps. It's that connection with the womanly legacy that's so important in successful anything. When it comes to so many things besides childbearing, but especially with childbearing, which so much has to do directly and intimately with your body, with your body as a woman. So, one of the things I encountered was, connecting, like the child connecting consistently to the breast. I had a lot more support at the time than most women in America, but I still had that struggle, and with a couple of my children. And one thing I can't emphasize enough is really putting that intention out there. If you need to write it on a piece of paper, and meditate on it, if you just need to write it on a piece of paper and put it up on the wall, light a candle, put that intention out there that you want to breastfeed your baby, and you want to reconnect to this vital line between women, the maternal line, and your baby. I can't emphasize that enough, that energetic, spiritual side enough. It's exhausting to have those issues. It brings up so many deep things inside a woman, issues of self-love and value, and that come from personal experience as well as your ancestral experience, your maternal line, and what's been passed to you. And something that helped with that was that intention. Definitely have that intention. The other thing, in allowing it to open up, allowing those channels to open up to breastfeeding. I might get a call, by the way, real soon, so I might have to pause again. But And just gonna pause for a second. Another book that really helped me was La Leche League's Womanly Art of Breastfeeding. I'll put that in the description as well. That one really helped. Lots of tips in there and it's the group is started by mothers who are really inspired by the womanly art of breastfeeding, and there's some really great tips there. But something I did, and so I read things from there, and something I did myself was, through my own intuition, was just not worrying and seeing that the child is going to, unless the child is something wrong with the child, as in like there's something functionally wrong with the child, if they're a healthy baby and you know that on the inside, the child is going to tell you if they're hungry and if they're getting enough. One of both the times that happened with my children, I just kept telling myself that the baby's healthy. The baby will tell me if she's hungry, and she will not be silent about it. And it made my breast sore a lot because they would like attach and let go and attach and let go and attach and let go. I'm telling you, soak your breasts with olive oil or castor oil in between feedings, and put that bra over. Put a bra you don't mind getting stained. Put it over your breasts and let it soak in there between feedings to really go that course, that pace with that baby. And eventually the baby will catch on. The baby will catch on. The biggest thing really is to try to let go and not try so hard. I know it's difficult not to do that, but as much as possible, let it flow and take a break if you need to in between. And I know that it helped mothers. It did help mothers. Especially in this very isolated realm, it really helped mothers to have the option of being able to just like put a little breast milk in a bottle or on the finger and feed the baby that way, just to get it started, and then to take a break, take that psychological, spiritual, emotional break, and then try again. The biggest thing is not to be hard on yourself and to really stay connected. If you need to light a candle, if you need to put that intention out there, remind yourself of the women in your line supporting you, spiritually, emotionally, however that you connect with that, and connecting with that ancient woman legacy of love and wisdom, and reviving that in yourself. Another thing that I encountered in breastfeeding, was a sore breast. Told you about that. And another thing I did, another thing I encountered in breastfeeding was that sometimes my milk would be slow to come, especially when she needed more. And women are cyclical beings. We go in cycles, and our milk goes in cycles, and who we are goes in cycles, and our menstruation is in cycles, and our pregnancy is in cycles, and our creativity is in cycles. Everything's in cycles, and that includes with milk and breastfeeding. And your baby's going to need more at some point. The baby's going to need less at some point. And especially as the baby gets older, those things change. And sometimes the baby and I just had to wait until the milk came. As I got more experienced, I discovered Nettles, nettle herb. You can buy it in a health food store in a tea bag, or you can buy it at redmoonherbs.com or mountainroseherbs.com. I'll put both in the description. Making a strong tea and infusion with that, steeping it for at least 2 to 4 hours, straining it. Sorry, 1 second. Thanks for waiting. Okay, hopefully we're good. So yeah, I don't want this video to go too much longer. Make it about half an hour plus. Yeah, I discovered Nettles, and you put the dry herb in the quart jar, and a good amount, a little, like, you know, if you're going to make a cup, put a tea bag size amount or more, and steep it for 2 to 4 hours at least. Strain it, put some honey in it, and drink that. So good for milk supply, regulating hormones, helping with energy level. Such a powerful herb, ancient womanly herb, that is your ally, that will give you so much love in this process. But to realize that, you know, talking to your baby and saying, you know, sometimes we gotta wait, you know, we're waiting for the milk to come. It usually didn't take too long, maybe 15 minutes, just to wait for that milk to come and to come down, and having that patience and being mindful of those cycles within your body. And not everything is instantaneous. Okay, not everything is instantaneous, and your baby knows that innately, and you know that innately. It's just that, especially if you're a mother in the Western world, in the business, linear, intellectual, oriented world, you are more than likely cut off from those cycles, those natural cycles. Well, not everything is instantaneous. In fact, in the natural world, things are not instantaneous. Things take time. Things have cycles. And so if the baby is healthy, you know, the other thing is there are going to be so many influences coming in to try to tell you that the baby isn't healthy, the baby isn't getting enough, the baby isn't matching this average or that average or whatever. And I encourage you so much, mothers, to follow your own instinct. Look at your own baby, look into their eyes, and know that, you know, especially if the baby is healthy, you know the baby's healthy. You know when the baby's healthy. You know when you and the baby are just going through something together, and there isn't anything to worry about, and you're going through this process, and you're growing through this process together in the breastfeeding, in the breastfeeding journey. So many things can be prevented. I'm going to put this in the description just because so many problems, mastitis, dry nipples, bleeding nipples, introverted nipples, all these things can be prevented through massaging your breasts at least 6 months before the birth. If it's less than that, fine, start now. Massaging those breasts and stretching. The other thing I was going to say is stretching your nipples. Stretch the nipples gently. Doesn't be strong, but gently, and massaging and just be gentle at first. You know, be gentle at first. Don't make it excruciating for yourself. Be gentle at first and massage those glands so they soften. Do it in the shower. So many problems can be prevented, I am telling you, with the practice of massage. And I'm going to put that in the description because it is so number one and so important. So yeah, that's my breastfeeding journey in a short half an hour video. There's just so much to say, but hopefully I gave you some foundational things, some tools there to help with this process and reconnecting with the ancient womanly art of breastfeeding and ancient womanhood, and becoming grounded in those cycles again, and be part of not just birthing this world. And I don't want to say just, but we are birthing this world, which is a phenomenal foundational thing. So birthing this world as well as reconnecting this world, and that's going to happen through women's reconnection with ourselves, with each other, with our natural cycles, and our relationship to our babies and who we are. So thanks so much for watching, and God bless.